This is Zoe Richardson, host of Backlook Cinema, the podcast. Before we get the show started, I wanted to caution you that the movie that we will be talking about has a character that takes his own life. I was frank and inelegant about how I spoke about this part of the story, so if you are in a place where you find the discussion of self-harm or unaliving yourself disturbing or causes you discomfort, then you may consider skipping this episode. If you find yourself in suicidal crisis or emotional distress, then please call the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Just dial 988 from your telephone. The 988 phone number is available to anyone living in the United States. Testing. 1, 2, 3. We are here. 2 weeks ago, we were here last week. And now we're back this week at Backlook Cinema, the podcast. I'm your host, Zo. That's Z-O or Z-O if you're outside of the United States, where you don't say Z, you say Z. It's the 96th episode. Thank you for downloading or streaming. We really appreciate it. We're going to take a look back at the movies of yesteryear and talk about the movie we love to watch from the 70s and 80s and early 90s. If you like what you're about to hear, then please take time out to offer some support by giving us a rating or review on your favorite podcast app. And you can share your review of our show on social media. Speaking of which, please follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or TikTok. And you can find the details in the show notes. Now, I just want to talk about the next movie that we're about to talk about. Me and Zach were actually able to sync our schedules together and watch this movie. So it was extra special to be able to do that. And while you won't be hearing my son's firsthand thoughts, you will have a chance to hear the firsthand experience of our next guest. I would like to introduce to you, she's a former journalist who... I'm sorry. I was trying to transition to the script that I had written for myself, and I started to fumble the football. But she's a former journalist who enjoys movies or watches movies that she enjoys and shares her thoughts and feelings with her co-host Elizabeth on their show, Why the Flick. Please welcome the talented, the intelligent, the empathetic, the beautiful Claire.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you for joining me. I am also thoroughly excited. I had fumbled the football on your introduction. I apologize for that. But
oh, absolutely fine. That's a lot to remember, a lot to say, so I totally get it.
I was writing. It all comes down to very poor handwriting. It's when you have a tablet that you can write on, it's a pleasure to be able to write on it, but it's also a curse because sometimes you can't read your words, and that's a problem.
Oh yeah.
So I guess the first, I'm going to ask a bunch of obvious questions because my audience knows that I'm not an interviewer. So my questions are always obvious and very predictable. But I got to ask these questions. And I think that people want to know why the flick?
Yeah, so my friend Elizabeth and I love watching movies. And so last year, around this time, actually, last year, we decided we wanted to start a podcast just to talk about all the movies that we love to watch. And so that's really what started it. And we landed on the title or the name of our podcast, Why the Flick, because as you mentioned, we are both former journalists. So we always like to watch these movies with a critical eye and also ask the, hard asking questions when we watch these movies. So that's kind of how Why the Flick was born. And yeah, we really just pick a movie each week. We kind of take turns about who's going to watch what. And we also, in our last season, introduced minisodes. So she and I will both talk about a movie in kind of a shortened format. And those are generally new movies that come out. But yeah, we've had a blast doing it. I love talking about movies, so it's a fun time.
Yeah, I could tell listening to the show. So why former journalist? Why did you quit the business, or do you plan on going back into it, or you decided to do a blog? What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just really, I won't speak for Elizabeth, but for me, it just really was more about lifestyle and just a change and shift in what I wanted to do with my career. So now I'm a social media manager. So I'm much more into like the marketing side of things now. And honestly, it just like works better with my schedule, having like a 9 to 5 versus in journalism. Sometimes you never know what your schedule is going to look like. And I really love like the social media aspect of things. So I run the social media for Why the Flick, which is really fun to do. So yeah, that's why I made the switch.
Okay. So I presume that you and Elizabeth met through your former profession as journalists.
Yes, we both worked at the same newspaper together.
So you've known each other for a while then.
Yeah, oh my gosh, I can't even think how many years now, but it's been several years that we've been friends.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So I've listened to a couple of your mini shows, and one of them you talked about Nope, and you said you hadn't
Yes.
seen the other Jordan Peele movies. So have you since seen the other ones?
Yeah, well, I've watched Get Out now because we were talking a little bit before this, and I have last October was trying to watch 31 scary movies. So Get Out was part of that. I did watch Get Out, loved it. It was so good. I haven't seen Us yet, but it's definitely on my list.
Yeah, Get Out was surprising because I didn't expect this because like his former project was Key and Peele. So I was expecting if he was going to go into
Yeah.
movies, I thought he was going to do comedy. And I think first he did an update of what's it called, The Outer Limits on I think for television, but I can't remember which network. And
Yeah.
then that's when I realized he's going in a different direction than he had been. And then that's when he jumped into that's when I saw what do you call it? Not Us, but the movie you just mentioned. See,
Oh,
memory.
Nope.
Nope. No, not Nope. The first one.
Get Out.
See, my memory already started fragmenting. But yes, yeah, that's when when you did Get Out. And it was so the funny thing about that movie is that people would watch that movie and they would assign meaning to it that he didn't actually put in there. And one of the most famous examples when you had the girl and she's eating cereal separately from the milk, right? And people applied meaning to that that Jordan just said, "Oh, I just put that in there because I thought it looked weird. I didn't imply any. It was never meant to be any more meaning than that." So yeah, that was
that's all. That scene was all I needed to know about like her being a serial killer or something. If you eat cereal without milk and then drink your milk from a straw in a glass afterward, there's some sus vibes there.
Right. I think the most important thing about that movie is that, well, any movie really, is like when you can introduce something into the culture that kind of reverberates and kind of stays in there. Like in Jurassic Park, there's the water rippling moment. Like you don't see or necessarily hear the dinosaur. It's just a thump, and you can see the water rippling in a small glass, and then you see that imitated in other movies, right? And for Nope, it was the introduction of the concept of the quiet place. So a long time after Nope, you would hear about people being in the quiet place, right? Like people seeming to betray their beliefs betray the beliefs of the group that they belong to or whatever. And so we would say, no, not the quiet place, the sunken place. We would say that they were in the sunken place.
Yes. Oh, that's right. Yeah. Which I'm like Quiet Place. I think that's a movie.
That's a movie. Right. I meant to say the sunken place, which is an incredible concept. There was an episode where you talked about this Emma Thompson movie. I forgot what it was. Not you, but it was Elizabeth pick, and it was what you call it. I forgot the name of the movie. But
was it Good Luck to You?
Yeah.
I'm blanking on the name too.
Right,
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, Good Luck to You something or other. But it's on streaming. And she said the director had decided that everybody should get naked to get comfortable with nudity because there was nudity in the movie, right? So she was wondering where they got that idea from. And I think maybe that they may have gotten the idea from the guy who directed Starship Troopers. I can't remember his name, but I think it was Paul Verhoeven. I can't remember. Anyway, have you seen Starship Troopers?
I have not.
Okay, so in Starship Troopers, there's a famous shower scene. So in his vision of the future, there's no gender separation as far as bathroom scenes or
Mm.
shower scene. So if you're going to shower everybody, because they're all soldiers, so everybody showers in the same, males and females, and gender not what's the word I'm looking for? Gender non-specific. They
Mm.
all share the same shower. It doesn't matter. And so you have so everybody's naked, everybody's in the shower, and they're both men and women in the shower. And so like people were nervous about it, and one actress was like, you're asking us to get naked, but this isn't easy for us. It's like, and the director is from Europe, and in Europe being nude is not as a big deal as in America.
Right.
So he's like, I don't see what the big deal is. And he strips off all of his clothes. They're like, see, it's not a big deal. And he was totally naked in front of the crew. Everybody kind of laughed. And I think they got it. And so they were able to shoot the shower scene. Maybe that's where Elizabeth's
Cool.
movie got that idea.
Yeah, I did remember the movie. It's Good Luck to You, Leo Grant. And I think it's
Awesome.
on Hulu, so you can stream it from there. But yeah, perhaps they did get inspiration from that.
Right. But maybe that is a therapeutic process. Maybe it's like, if you're not comfortable doing something, then you handhold somebody into doing that uncomfortable thing, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not a therapist. I don't know how it works.
No. I think if you're going to ask people to do it, though, you should be able to do it too. So, I mean, that seems fair.
And that's good, because in the military, they like to say, I would never do something that would never ask my men to do, or that I haven't done. And so speaking of the military, we are going to transition over to a movie that is steeped in military decoration, because it's about the military. And we're going to transition to that right after this musical cue. If I can find the buttons for musical cues, I will play the musical cue. And after the musical cue, we will go ahead and talk about this movie. And we're back. And the movie that we watched was A Few Good Men. So Claire, if you would be so kind, tell us about A Few Good Men.
Absolutely. So A Few Good Men is about a hotshot Navy JAG officer, Lieutenant Kaffee, is saddled with a case that he doesn't believe in. His clients are accused of murder, and he would just as soon take a plea deal and be done with the case. His supervisor, Lieutenant Commander Galloway, however, believes that the two Marines in their charge are innocent and pushes the brash and cocky Kaffee to take their case to court to get an acquittal, a case that they are certainly destined to lose.
All right, thank you. My internet connection went a little wonky, but
oh no,
but it's
hopefully
back
got it.
on track. That's all right. So this movie was released December 11th, 1992. It was produced by Columbia Pictures, Castle Rock Entertainment, David Brown Productions. It grossed over $141 million in the U.S. and Canada, and over $243 million worldwide on a $41 million budget, and it had great reviews and well deserved. I remember watching this,
yes,
and being thoroughly positively impacted by this movie. So tell us who starred in this movie.
Yeah, so first and foremost, this movie stars Tom Cruise. We all know who Tom Cruise is. He plays Lieutenant Daniel Kaffee. Other films that he has been in, several, but there is Born on the 4th of July, Legend, Rain Man, and many more. I think of Mission Impossible.
Normally when an actor has like this steep of a collection of movies, I'd like to go ahead and like talk about projects that they're about to film. But the only thing is that he doesn't have a whole bunch of films that he's about to film. Like there's a rumor that he's supposed to be filming, or he's supposed to be making, what's that movie? It's supposed to be Death, Die, Repeat. No, Live, Die, Repeat. And it's a sequel to a sci-fi movie that he did earlier, where he's dying over and over again, and he comes back to life and he fights the alien. I can't remember the name of the movie, but
is it Edge of Tomorrow?
Yes, Edge of Tomorrow.
Okay,
thank you. I appreciate that. It was like I had it on the tip of my tongue and it was gone.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's supposed to be, but it's just a rumor at this point. And the only other movie that he's doing is a Mission Impossible movie. And it seemed like earlier in his career he was doing a lot of varied different types of movies, but now it's like straight up just kind of like action thriller movies. That's where his focus is right now, which is just fine. I'm glad he's found something that he likes to do, and he's doing it.
And he's great at the action movies. I mean,
everybody says no one runs better than Tom Cruise.
Oh yeah, he's an incredible runner. Props to him. Could not do that.
The next on the list is Jack Nicholson. He plays Colonel Nathan R. Jessup. He's been in Chinatown, As Good as It Gets, and The Witches of Eastwick, and many, many more. And he absolutely dominates the screen in this movie.
Absolutely. My God, he is incredible. So good. Such a great villain.
Right.
We also have Demi Moore, who plays Lieutenant Commander Joanne Galloway. Her credits include G.I. Jane, Ghost, and Indecent Proposal.
Yeah, she was
Indecent Proposal. I don't know why I said that so weird.
That's okay. She was also very impressive in this movie. She was young, but she was very strong, and she was just impressive in this movie. She was I remember I was talking to somebody else about career women, and I think it was on Twitter, and we were talking about how there was like a Scully effect, and because of her performance on the X-Files, it made a lot of women want to get into science and police work and that sort of thing. And I don't know if there's like a Demi Moore effect from this movie, but I can see her having that type of effect in this movie because she embodies that professional woman that a lot of people aspire to be.
Yeah, I feel like she's such... Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I just feel like she's such like the linchpin in this whole thing of like, this case wouldn't even have gotten brought into court, and we wouldn't have even gotten the movie that we did if it wasn't for Demi Moore's character.
Right.
I really just love her. It's so funny you mentioned X-Files because I've been binge watching old X-File TV show episodes because I didn't watch X-Files growing up, but now I'm really hooked on it.
Yeah, it's so easy to get hooked on X-Files. What's funny was that I remember when it first premiered, I didn't even know it was a show, right? I was just flipping through the channels, and I just seen like it was like the middle of an episode. It had something to do with the submarine in the Arctic, and some guy was yelling Scully. I was like, oh, I gotta watch this movie. I thought it was a movie when I first saw it. I gotta watch this movie, and I found out it was a TV show. I was like, oh my God, it was incredible. And
yes,
I've been in love with it ever since.
Absolutely.
So up next is Kevin Bacon. He plays Captain Jack Ross. He's been in Footloose, Mystic River, Hollow Man, and he's inspired a whole game unto himself. He's just an incredible dude.
Yes, love Kevin Bacon.
Oh, did you know he's going to be in the upcoming movie? No, it's not a movie. It's a special. It's a Christmas special.
Yes, Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yes.
I'm so excited. I love that. I love Guardians of the Galaxy. So I'm so happy they brought Kevin Bacon on.
Right. As Kevin Bacon.
Yes, as himself. It's going to be great. I can't wait.
Absolutely.
So we also have Kiefer Sutherland, who plays Second Lieutenant Jonathan Kendrick. He is known for his roles in Rabbit Hole, The First Lady, and The Fugitive.
Yes, he's those are all TV shows. He's basically been he's decided he's a TV actor now. Like he was earlier in his career. I think that if he wanted to do a movie, he could do a movie, but he's decided that he wants to live in television, so that's where he lives. And I think television is better for it.
Yeah, I was looking at his IMDb and I was like, where have I seen him in? And he was in Designated Survivor, which was like, I think one of the more recent TV shows he's been in. I have not watched it, but I did. It was on my watch list and now it kind of fell off. So maybe I'll revisit it at some point.
Right. Up next is Kevin Pollak. He plays Lieutenant Sam Weinberg. He was in The Usual Suspect, End of Days, and The Whole 10 Yards. And he's one of my favorite comedians when I was growing up. It's funny because in the trivia, I'll mention something that Tom Cruise did in one of his acting choices. And it's funny that Kevin Pollak is there. And because Kevin Pollak is one of the greatest things that he does is his impersonation. So we'll talk about it a little bit more later.
Yeah, I think I know Kevin Pollak the most recently in The Marvelous Miss Maisel.
Right.
Maisel. But yeah, I know him from that. We also have Wolfgang Bodison, who plays Lance Corporal Harold W. Dawson. He has been in Sandbean and Gridlock. I don't know if I pronounced that first one correctly, but
I don't blame you, because I was
okay.
going over it in my head. I was like, I don't know what that says. But those are, I think I know. I don't know if this is the same Gridlock that I know about, but these aren't huge movies. If it's not the Gridlock, which Tupac Shakur, then I'm not sure what movie that is.
Yeah.
But he's been in smaller movies. All of his movies have been relatively small. Up next is James Marshall. He played PFC Loudon Downey. He's been in Twin Peaks, Fire Walk with Me, The Shaft, and many other small time movies. I think most people would probably know him from Twin Peaks, the TV show.
Yeah, that's where it worked. The one thing I recognized most on his page. We also have J.T. Walsh, who plays Lieutenant Colonel Matthew Andrew Markinson. He has been in Sling Blade, Breakdown, Good Morning, and Vietnam.
Oh, that's Good Morning Vietnam. Sorry.
Oh, nope, you're fine. I thought that was a semicolon, not a comma. It's Good Morning Vietnam.
That's okay. I hadn't seen that movie either. As a matter of fact, I hadn't seen any of these movies, but I know that they're all good movies. I remember people talked about Sling Blade for years after it came in, and Breakdown is something I wanted to see, we just never got around to seeing, as well as Good Morning Vietnam. But I'm sure he's good in all of those.
Yeah.
So up next is J.A. Preston. He plays Judge Julius Alexander Randolph. He was in Remo Williams, The Adventure Begins, Body Heat, and many other movies. So he's just a familiar face, a character actor, familiar face, brings gravity to the scene.
Yes, definitely. I think he was a great character to play the judge.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And then last, but certainly not least, we have Cuba Gooding Jr., who plays Corporal Carl Handmaker. He has been in roles like Jerry Maguire, Radio, and Men of Honor. And I love that Cuba Gooding Jr. is in this for a very brief moment, but he's in it. Yeah,
I'm guessing it's a cameo, because I'd like to think that he was a pretty big star by the time this movie came out. So I think that either this is a cameo, or like he was in between projects, or maybe this is a favor. I'm not exactly sure, but I was so surprised and delighted to see Cuba Gooding Jr. in this movie. And the only reason that I put him in the list, besides him being in the movie, because he has a very small part, is because I actually met him one time.
Did you really? Yeah, I'm so jealous.
It wasn't that it was such a funny situation. So it wasn't a situation where I seen him and I say I met him, because I've seen many celebrities but not actually met them. This is when, like, he came up to me, we shook hands. So it's, hello, my name is Cuba. I was like, oh, nice to meet you. My name is Alonzo. Right? It's one of the, but at the time he was very drunk, and it was when he was filming this movie called Pearl Harbor. So, because I was living in Hawaii at the time, I was working at it was a resort that he was staying at, a hotel resort that he was staying at, and I was working as security at the resort. And there was nobody. It was at nighttime. There was nobody outside. I was like standing around, and so him and his, I guess it was his body double. They were kind of like walking around the pool area, and that's when he saw me, and we met. And then he and his body double just kind of went on. Oh, they had dates. I just remembered. Okay. Or something like that.
That's so fun. That's amazing that you got to meet him, though. I love how he was like, hi, I'm Cuba. And you're like, yes, I know who you are.
Well, no, I wasn't. I wouldn't presume to be that arrogant.
You're like,
I tried
thank you for clarifying.
I was just delighted that he, as drunk as he was polite enough to say hello and then carry on with his business. I thought that was awesome. It was like one of my favorite celebrity meetings.
Yeah. Gosh, I don't know if I've ever really had a celebrity meeting that I can recall, other than I did meet the star of Briscoe County Jr. once when I was very, very little.
Oh, that's what's his name?
I know, I cannot remember his name.
He the Evil Dead guy.
Oh, Bruce Campbell?
Yeah, Bruce Campbell. Oh, so not Bruce Campbell.
Wait, maybe it was. I was a baby, so I only have like I have a picture proof of that it happened. So I'll have to go back and look now.
Yeah, Bruce Campbell was the star of Briscoe County Jr. So you must be talking about Bruce Campbell.
It must be him, yes.
If it wasn't the other guy, Julius, what's his name? I can't remember. But there was I don't even remember if Julius is kind of like his partner, but I don't remember if Julius was in every episode. And it wasn't about him. It was about Briscoe County Jr., who was played by Bruce Campbell.
Awesome. I I could not remember who Briscoe County Jr. was, and so
Right.
thank you for enlightening me.
It was one of my favorite shows growing up. I wish they
Same.
would stream it somewhere. I think they are. I need to look for it.
Yeah, definitely.
So moving right along, this movie was directed by Rob Reiner. It's funny, right? Because I'm always surprised when I see a movie directed by Rob Reiner. I was like, I always go back to, isn't he a comedian? But then I remember he just started as a comedic actor and then he transitioned to being a very dramatic director. But
yes.
It wasn't a swift transition because he directed This Is Spinal Tap, in which he also played a role, and then. And I was probably the last like truly comedic project that he did, and then he did Stand By Me, Ghosts of Mississippi, and a host of very excellent dramatic movies. He's been one of my favorite directors before I understood that directors were people who made movies.
I know, same. I was like, wow, I can't believe like he has such an incredible like directing and acting credits. I remembered him. I used to watch New Girl, and so he like made a cameo once as the dad in New Girl, but he's definitely been in so many other things, and he's directed so many other great movies too. Like he has a lot of credits to his name.
Right. I just my favorite thing about him is like when I first seen him in All in the Family, because that was one of my favorite TV shows growing up, and he was the hippie / liberal son-in-law of Archie Bunker and always giving him guff, right?
Yes.
So
definitely.
And it's funny, right? Because I gravitated towards that, even though I was too young to understand why, right? Why his role was so important. But and now he's bald, but then he had way too much hair, right? So it's funny how things go on like that.
Yeah. Oh, time.
Right.
So this movie is written by Aaron Sorkin. His credits also include Moneyball, The Social Network, and Charlie Wilson's War.
Yes, all excellent movies. All movies I've seen. And I didn't realize he wrote all. I knew he wrote The Social Network, but I didn't know about Moneyball, Charlie Wilson's War. People are so in love with Aaron Sorkin. What's your relationship with him?
I'm fine with him. I actually didn't realize. I feel like I recognized the name, but I didn't know what his credits actually included. And so when I was looking through, like he was a writer on The West Wing, which I feel like makes a lot of sense with A Few Good Men and how it's written. I think actually A Few Good Men was a play at first.
Yes.
Okay, and then they turned it into a script for a movie, which is pretty cool. But I have seen The Social Network. I've seen Moneyball. But yeah, and both I thought were really good.
Yeah. I remember, I will say that his dialogue is undefeated. So there's this, he did a show called The Newsroom for a bit. And there's this clip from The Newsroom that people like to play over and over again. And it's that like the main newscaster just describing like the political state of America. And it's like a beautiful speech. And it's like, that's all Aaron Sorkin, just working magic with the pen. It's like he's absolutely delightful.
Yeah. And I mean, with a legal drama, you have to have great dialogue because there is so much argumentative, back and forth questioning that happens throughout A Few Good Men. So definitely the script is very good.
And what I really liked it is that, because I was in the military, so what I truly enjoyed was that it felt so accurate and authentic. Like the military culture was authentic, the dialogue was authentic. And I like that it kind of shows what people don't understand is that there are different subcultures within the military. So like the JAG office would have a different culture than like the Marines that are at Guantanamo Bay, and there's a different level of respect for like orders or discipline and those sort of things. So yeah, I really appreciated that. So the music was by Mark Scheinman. It's funny because at first I was like, I don't know this guy, and then I realized I had did a movie where he was also the composer. I was like, I should have known. But he has 70 composer credits to his name. And he has done LBJ, City Slickers, which is the movie that we did on the show, and Hairspray. So those are all great. Well, I don't know. Hairspray was a good musical, but I don't know how much of that was his contribution since I didn't see the movie. But City Slickers was fun. City Slickers was a fun movie, and this one, it was just all in this movie. It was all dramatic music. It was good. It was appropriate, right? And I appreciated that.
Yeah, I feel like the music was very mysterious. It really set the tone and dramatic, like you said, and also maybe like a little scary in some parts, not like super scary, but definitely had that mystery to it.
Right. And it's in the background, and yet it doesn't get in the way, because in this movie, it's really the acting that takes the lead in this movie, and is the acting and the dialogue. So the movie is just kind of in the background, just sort of guiding us, but not being overbearing as it might be in something like an action movie or even a horror movie, right, where it's almost like they're hand holding us. But in this movie, it's just like, well, it doesn't need to be overstated or, that sort of thing. So that's it for the opening credits. And if you enjoyed the show, remember that you can get t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, face masks, jerseys, and more at our website, backlickcinema.com/shop. Autumn is coming up. And if you're in need of, also Christmas, I meant to change the words. Christmas is coming up. So go ahead and get your orders in before Christmas happens. Don't be, and you can, and your gifts can be received before Christmas.
It's still fall too. I mean,
Yeah, that too. Natural. But you got to advertise for Christmas because,
absolutely
Christmas things.
I can't believe it's already almost Christmas.
Yeah, I know. It's just time is, especially when you start to get older, time just starts flying by. It's like, and now it's Christmas.
I know. It's like Halloween ends, and now all I see on TV are Christmas movies, and I'm like, we haven't even gotten to Thanksgiving, but you know what? Oh well.
Yeah, Halloween ends, and it's like it instantly transitions to Christmas. Like Thanksgiving doesn't even get a fair shake anymore.
I know. I feel a little bad for Thanksgiving, but.
Hold on. Before we continue, I want to break in with a special announcement. My friend John from the Movie Lovers Unite podcast will be doing a live interview with renowned film and TV actor Coleman Domingo from the long-running TV show Fear the Walking Dead and the critically acclaimed Candyman reboot movie. On the Movie Lovers Unite podcast, Coleman Domingo will talk about his most recent project, a short film called New Moon. Don't you dare miss Coleman Domingo on the Movie Lovers Unite podcast on YouTube on December 22nd at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Movie Lovers Unite YouTube channel /podcast channel. I'll leave a link to the Movie Lovers Unite YouTube channel in the show notes, and they can also be heard wherever you listen to podcasts. And now, back to the show. And we're back, and we're going to talk about our favorite parts. So, Claire, what are your favorite parts about A Few Good Men?
Oh my gosh, there's so many favorite parts, especially once we get more into the courtroom scenes. But before that, even, I really just love moments with Joe. And I think that's like who we first get introduced to in the movie. And I really like seeing her interactions with Daniel in the beginning and how contentious they are. And, Joe's really trying to prove that she is a good lawyer and she wants to take this case, but her, I don't know what they're called. Her authority levels are basically
supervisor.
Like
that's cool.
Supervisor. Thank you. I was like, there's a word for this and I can't think of it. They really dismiss her and they really want a man for the job, but she's got all of this experience, and I think she's, like I said, the linchpin for projecting this case forward. And in the beginning, you really see how her and Daniel interact. Daniel comes across as this like very obnoxious, arrogant, full of himself kind of person. She calls him a used car salesman, and so seeing like that growth from the beginning till to the very end when Daniel finally finds respect for her and really takes on this case and actually puts effort into something. I just love seeing their dynamic together.
Right. I don't think they dismiss her necessarily, but what I do like about that scene is like at first he says, Lieutenant Commander, why don't you go out and get a cup of coffee? She says, no, I'm fine, sir. Like, why don't you leave the room so we can talk about you behind your back?
Yes. And she's like, okay.
It's like he's trying to give her a polite way to save face and, so that they can discuss what they have to do. And she doesn't take the hint. And there's several times in the meeting where she doesn't take the hint. So that just shows that she's green and she's kind of new. And I don't think that they want to necessarily get a man for the job. It's like she doesn't have that particular courtroom experience. Like she's working as, even though she's a lawyer, she's been working as internal affairs. So she's an investigator, not really a lawyer. So they wanted something who knows how to negotiate with the prosecution. And they realize that they have to take it seriously because it's a code red situation. They're like, oh man, they're doing that crap again. It's like, I thought we stopped doing that. That's that crap that we told them to stop doing. They're doing that crap again. So I think they don't want that crap to get out into the public. So they want to get ahead of it. So they immediately take her seriously, but they don't want her to take the case because they don't feel like that she has enough enough arguing experience, I guess. And you can kind of see that in the movie where her amateurish shows, she kind of makes some classic mistakes.
Yes, she does, unfortunately.
And it's kind of funny.
It is. There's like, what's that part where she tries to like, I strongly object.
Yes, I strenuously object.
Like, I strenuously, yeah.
And then she gets made fun of. It's like the other lieutenant played by Kevin Pollak is like, oh, I object, Your Honor. It's like overruled. It's like, I extremely suggest. Oh, I'm strenuously.
Well, in that case, I'll change my mind.
Which is also a funny moment. But yeah, I like that opening scene. I like the fact that she is portrayed as so strong and competent, and she is so able, and I really appreciated that in her introduction. That like she's not, even though she's like bumbling a little bit, like one of the things that she was practicing how to get her boss to give her the case, like, and she's going through the wording and she kind of fumbles the wording. Like I fumbled the wording earlier when I came and tried to introduce you. I fumbled everything up, and she does the same thing in this movie, and that was hilarious.
I feel like that was so relatable because I feel like that's something I do, and like I'll like repeat it over and over in my head, like I'm gonna say it this way, no, I'm gonna try it this way, no, I'm gonna do it this way. And I don't know if that's just a type A personality thing, but I was definitely like, I do the same thing. Don't worry, Joe.
Yeah, right. So let's see. This movie is beautifully shot. And I really like that I don't often talk about the cinematography. I really just take all that for granted. It's only when you get bad cinematography that you're like, what is this? What's going on here? And it gets to the point where I can't see what's going on. Then it's kind of annoying. And I know that night scenes are really hard to shoot. But like people complain about the night shots in Game of Thrones, and then there was similar complaints in the night shots of what was it called? The Eternals. So there were some night scenes there. The director wanted to use natural lighting. Natural lighting doesn't work. That's why you have artificial lighting. So yeah,
exactly.
And the director was like, I meant to do that. Well, you meant wrong. I don't care if that was your choice. It was the wrong choice. You have to eat that. You have to eat it that it wasn't good.
Right. Yeah, that's fair.
So it's a shame that I'll only notice it when it's bad. But in this movie, it was particularly good. So that's one of my favorite things about the movie. The uniforms, the costumes were outstanding. The uniforms were crisp. They were proper when they were supposed to be proper. It was like I liked all of that because I don't like Mr. Military, but I have a deep appreciation for it when it's done correctly, and I'm offended when it's wrong. When you see a movie and it looks bad, it's deeply offensive.
Well, I'm glad to hear that representation was spot on then. So I don't have a military background, so I just kind of take it as like face value. So it's definitely good to hear that it was authentic.
Right. And it's impressive because they didn't get a lot of support from the military. Usually when you have when it's when it's accurate, it's because you're getting a lot. You have like a military advisor, and you have a lot of, and they probably had military advisors in this film, but you have the actual military helping the production out. But they didn't get that type of support for this movie. So another thing that was interesting was Jack Nicholson, his colonel over at Guantanamo. They're discussing. It's kind of like a flashback scene. So they're discussing the soldier, or the Marine he hasn't died yet. I forgot the name of the Marine.
Santiago.
Yeah, Santiago. So they're talking about Santiago, and that Santiago was going to was requesting transfers, and he didn't want to transfer Santiago. He wanted him to, tough it out. They're going to train him, right? And I was like, there's no discussion of mental health or possible physical health issues, like none of that. It's like, in his mind, Santiago's just a weakling and he's going to whip it out of him. I'm like, that's kind of messed up, right?
Absolutely, yes. And this is, I guess, the first introduction to his character that we see, but he's just completely out of control. And I think he even says to Kendrick about Santiago, like, if he doesn't get 4.6 proficiency score, I'm going to blame you and then I'm going to kill you. And I was just like, whoa, dude, like that escalated. Dang.
Right. I don't think he really was going to kill him, but he definitely said it like he was. It sounded authentic. It sounded like he was really going to kill him.
Yes. I mean, I would believe it.
Right. And you had mentioned Jonathan Kendrick, Kiefer Sutherland's character. I just watched him in The Lost Boys, and he is just great. He's just a good actor. It's like when you see him in The Lost Boys and how he was there, and he's basically commanding every scene in that movie. And then in this movie, where he's so straight-laced, like he is not necessarily robotic, but it just seems like he is so proper in his mannerisms that he's definitely believable in this movie. It's just amazing how he's able to like exist in this world.
Yeah, and he's definitely a lackey to Jessup for sure. Like, he follows him and follows all of his orders to a T. And I think Robotic is pretty spot on, because he does kind of have that, I don't know, there's just like a glazed over look in his eyes where I'm just almost like, what is going on in there? And so I think at one point Jessup even calls him a weasel. And I'm like, that's also a really good description for his character.
Right. So what are the parts that can you think of right now?
So I mean, obviously, I think a lot of the scenes with Jessup are ones that we want to talk about, specifically like the ending. But before then, the scene where we had just talked about, the flashback scene where obviously Jessup did not want to transfer him, and then we see the same setting, but once Daniel and Joe come in to talk with Jessup and the other military members, Jessup says, I initiated the transfer order. That's what I wanted all along. But we as the audience have already seen he's already lying, because that's not what happened in the previous scene. And so, they walk through Santiago's room to get like an idea of his living situation and what happened at the crime scene. But then we also like see them eating lunch together with Jessup. And I think this is another point where you just realize Jessup is a terrible person, because it was getting uncomfortable at some points, because he was talking about how you always want a woman to be your superior, because then like you can get great blowjobs. And I was just like, okay, this is getting to be so extreme. And Joe, I think, really holds her own in this situation, because I think it would be really easy for her to get upset, as most people I think would, but she just flat out is like, do code red still happen here? And she's like the first person to ask him. So yeah, I really liked that part.
Yeah, that was a great scene. That was when Kaffee was trying to get up and go, because he had asked all the questions that he needed. He got all the information that he needed from the colonel. He's trying to get up and go, but she wanted to ask more questions. Like, come on, let's go, Joe. And then what happened was she kept challenging the colonel, and then the colonel went immediately misogynistic, like, because he wanted to get under her skin, because he greatly outranks her. He's on track to work for, like, directly for the president, and so now he's going to basically it was his way of putting her in her place, right? But he did it in the most evil and crudest way ever, right?
Yes, absolutely.
and
Ugh, gross.
and there are no women at his unit, so he's not really used to seeing a woman in uniform. I don't think that in his unit there would be like a single female for him to relate to. So
no,
it's almost like seeing a woman in uniform he probably finds offensive. So
I'm sure he does. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, he was that was his go-to like reaction to her, right? But I liked how like she just kept dogfighting, even though the lawyer who was, basically Kaffee has greater skill as in deposition in those skills than she would have. So she's being like direct, and he's trying to ask questions around the corners, and she's being direct. And it's like a direct attack on a person like this is not going to work. You gotta
yeah. And that's why I think he asks like for the transfer order. He's like, oh, and just by the way, like, can you send me a copy of the transfer order? And you see Jessup like go, huh?
Right. And she picked up on that. Which plays off later on in the film. So, let me see. My screen had just went dark. There's one thing where she basically kind of pushes him to take their client seriously, right? Because he is almost like as soon as he reads the case, he's down for the plea bargain. He's down. He's like, he's like, I can get him 12 years. I'm that good. I can get him 12 years, and then they'll be home in 6 months. That was his goal, but that was not what his supervisor wanted. So Joanne, she was really pushing him to fight the case, and he wasn't. I don't think he believed in them. He didn't believe in that they were innocent. He believed that they murdered this kid, or even if he believed them, there was no way that they could prove it. And the other thing is that even actually after he went to talk to him, this is before he even talked to him, but even after he went to talk to him, they weren't all that forthcoming about the situation. So that was not helpful to the case. But yeah, that was the whole thing. He was ready to, and it was her really pushing him to go ahead and take it to court. And I like that aspect of it. That was kind of almost a theme or thread of the movie that was affecting his story arc, being somebody, not necessarily, well, basically somebody who didn't believe in the case to going forward to believing that he could win the case. And it's like he went all the way up to the end of the movie not believing that they could win.
Yeah, and he did. He really did. Yeah, I really loved that like progression from him completely like not wanting to take the case, but to think like it's not going to go to court. And then I think all of these little questions start popping up, and he's like, these things just aren't adding up. I think like there's a chance that potentially like we're still going to lose, but I'm going to try my best to, to try to get them justice. And I think it also we get like little hints about his relationship with his father. His father has since passed, but his father was like Attorney General of the United States. So like, Daniel really feels like he has to live up to the expectations that his father had. And I think he's really just trying to prove himself that he can go to a courtroom, make an argument, and try to win a case. And so I think that's part of it too.
Right. One of the thoughts that Zachary had was that how the opposing counsel could have a friendly relationship and be on opposite ends. And I explained to him, well, it's kind of like sports. That's why they could have baseball as kind of I guess like a minor theme in this movie. So they both love sports, both Tom Cruise's character and Kevin Bacon's character. They both love sports, but Lieutenant Kaffee is very particular to baseball, and Kevin Bacon, Jack Ross, is particular. He likes basketball. That's where he's that's where he's at home at. So, and I explained like, you can have two teams, and you're like these guys are friends, but because they're on opposite teams, they're fighting for their team, so they're going to oppose each other. So that's the kind of relationship that these attorneys have. They go out and they drink. That's why somebody like Kaffee can get all of these plea bargains. Like, he's never been inside of the courtroom. He's a hotshot because he gets all these plea bargains, or he'll get the case dismissed. Like in the very first opening, the establishing shot of the character, right? The what do you call him? Prosecutor comes in. He's like, I'm going to charge him, man. And they had marijuana. He's like, what, you going to charge him for having oregano? It was oregano. Right. It's like, but they thought they had oregano. It's like, no, I'm going to file this motion to this motion. And you're going to be fighting for years just to get these people convicted for possessing oregano. It's not going to work. And so I think he got him like disorderly conduct or something like that, where they got like a few weeks. It
really he brought it down way much.
He flea marketed it down all the way to them just like having a couple of days off, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And so that tells you like he is a good lawyer. He's just like not challenging himself enough. He just is like trying to like get to like the end goal of like, I'm just gonna like put in the bare minimum work that I have to to do this. But he knows his stuff.
Right. He definitely knows his stuff. So that was the thing. So and I like when Joanne calls him out on it. It's like he says, I'm a good lawyer. He says, no, you're a car salesman, like you said earlier. He's like, you just you're just putting on a show, but you're not actually like arguing cases. So what happened about like the sports analogy, to take it further, so the reason that Zack come out with this, like, so the opposing counsel, they go out, they're drinking together. Another point that I wanted to point out is that why do all professions seems to have bars that they go to? Like when you see a cop movies, cop go to cop bars. When you watch a fireman movie, firemen go to fireman bars. When you watch movies about journalists go to journalist bars. Is there such thing as a journalist bar?
Not that I know of. I mean, there's a bar where journalists go to, but I don't think it's like the journalist bar.
Right, but it always seems to happen that way. It does. And She-Hulk, the series, there seems to be...
I was just thinking of that.
Right, there was like a lawyer bar in this movie. It's like in a montage, but there's a lawyer bar. I was like, why is there a lawyer? Because he's actually is a short snippet, but he's drinking, and beside him is an attorney that does the plea bargaining thing. He's explaining it to his comrade, and it's basically the same thing that Kaffee did in the beginning of the movie. I was like, where are these bars at? I
know. I don't know. They're in Washington, D.C., right?
I don't go to bars, so I don't know.
Okay. I was like, maybe it's a D.C. thing. I don't know.
There are definitely bars in Washington, D.C. And like there are certain bars that like certain people from a neighborhood might go to, but I'm not familiar with professional bars, like a bars that everybody from a certain profession goes to.
Yeah.
But
not me either.
Right. But I digress. So so Kaffee and what's his name? Jack. I forgot his name already.
Oh, Ross.
Yeah, Ross. Yeah, I got it, Jack, in the second time.
Yeah, Jack's his first name.
So Kaffee and Jack Ross are talking, and they're talking about how, and basically, he's saying like, you got bullied into taking this case. You got bullied by, your comrades. You got bullied by the memory of your father. And, that's when he got up and left. And it was funny was that, he's mad and he's angry, but the thing that Jack said were true. Everything that Jack said was true. So he couldn't refute anything that Jack said. The only thing he could say, he stood up and said, "You're a goddamn lousy softball player." That's all he could say. That was it. That was his best argument.
I know. I couldn't help but laugh at that point where I was just like, okay. And
right.
And he's like, that's the worst thing that you can try to like insult him back with, which had nothing to do with anything like that Ross was saying at that moment. But yeah, it was definitely, I mean, Tom Cruise just definitely has some great like outburst moments, which there's like one big one that he has later that I'm sure we'll talk about, but his just emotion and emphasis and like projection in those scenes I think is incredible. Right.
So what did you think of I had mentioned it earlier, the legal montage. What did you think of the legal montage?
A montage I think is fine. Like it is what it is. It's like it helps progress the story, I think, in a fast way. I actually really liked that. And correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm trying to remember it off the top of my head, but like the camera's kind of like panning into the window of where Kaffee lives. But you see like the scenes change throughout time. So it's like they're like, and it's like a voiceover too of Kaffee like talking about what they're going to try to do. But you see this different scenes change. And I did like that part because you see them kind of start to form this camaraderie, the three of them, where they're like throwing Chinese food like buckets and like laughing and also like developing this argument. So that part I liked. But yeah, like I think it's a hit or miss sometimes with montage scenes.
Yeah, this is definitely one of my favorite montage scenes. I kind of like how it started off. It started off with him saying, when they're in a court and he says, oh, and that was another great scene when they're in court and they don't know what he's going to do. They don't know if he's going to take a plea bargain or if he's going to fight the case and declare not guilty. And that's when this is after the first montage and he comes in and they say, the judge asks, how do you plead? And he says, not guilty. And
that was really good.
They look at him, so they realize they're going to fight. And I like that moment. And so the first thing he says is like, he's going to need legal pads and pens and this and that. Yep. And then he says, the only thing I got in my house is Yoo-hoo and Cocoa Puffs. So if you want anything, you got to bring yourself. So
yeah. and Joe brings Chinese food as like a great way to like get them to be excited.
Right. And then it's like, and you go in his house and in the next scene, and sure enough, he grabs a bottle of Yoo-hoo out of his refrigerator. And I'm like, I remember Yoo-hoo.
Definitely. Oh my gosh.
So an atrocious chocolate drink. So anyways.
I know.
I was like, I remember drinking and I was like, this is disgusting. Why are they advertising this way? Anyway, I digress. So, I like that. And one of the things that I really liked about it that kind of carried through was that when he says, if something happens, no matter what happens, you act like you meant it to happen. You like the prosecutor said something, when you make a mistake, you act like that it meant to happen. Don't go ahead and start whispering. Don't show a reaction. Just act like that. That's because he's part of as far as arguing a case, the show of the thing is as important as the argument that you're making, as that's part of the communication. So, and then I like that you can see that. So when Joanne starts to make mistakes, he doesn't look at her and have a shock look on his face, and he doesn't change his expression. He's just like, laser. It's like, if anything, when she makes her mistake, he gets even more focused, right, on looking at the judge. He's like,
I know,
because he has to.
He's
pretend.
Like, don't break character.
Right. He had to stay in character because he had to pretend like this is what he meant to happen. But this is absolutely what he did not want to happen. He didn't want his junior counsel jumping up and making these motions or arguments or objections or whatever without his expressed backup or whatever. So that was crazy.
Yeah, it was.
I strenuously object and to an objection that he already made. And
absolutely.
Then he explained to her that it's the objection in and of itself is not important. It's important to get words in front of the jury so that the jury hears it. So even if there is an objection, the jury's going to think about it anyway. The jury aren't computers. They're not going to wipe it from their minds. It's still going to be in their head, whatever was said, right? So I think
Kaffee was like really polite even after the fact, after the courtroom had dispersed. Like he was even sticking up for Joe at that moment.
Right.
He was like, look, she made a mistake.
Right.
It's fine.
Right.
Now he does get really pissed at her later on when she does make a really huge mistake. But yeah, at that moment he was being kind about it.
What mistake are you referring to? I totally forgot.
The Downey incident where we find out Downey was not technically in the room when Kendrick gave the code red.
Right. That was something that he needed to know.
Omission.
It's like she was supposed to dispose them. She's supposed to get that information out, and it blindsided them, because the key to being an attorney is knowing all the information before you ask questions. Like, it's almost like with a police detective, they're not asking you questions that they don't know the answer to. So, and that's double for an attorney. The attorney's not asking it. When you're in court and the attorney's asking questions, he knows what he he's almost expecting you to say stuff that he already knows, and he's going to use that to bolster his case, and he's going to try to trap you, or something of that, or it's like when he's questioning his own witnesses, it's basically reciting a script. The witness isn't answering questions in real time; they're basically acting out a performance that they had rehearsed before, at least when you hire an attorney, not when you have like a public defender. But it's almost like you're reciting a play that you've already rehearsed in front of a jury. That's like one of the things when he was talking about, when he was like when he was talking to the witnesses, you have to say it this way, you have to say it fast, because this country bumpkin stuff might work in the beginning, but it's not going to play out if you continue to talk slow. So it was that. So that was that was he was truly mad at that moment because he was blindsided him like that.
No, and it was like Joe's fault. Like she should have confirmed, like, for sure, like, what were you in the room, because that's what it definitely sounded like, was that they were both in the room to receive the code read. And I felt so bad for Downey. I feel really bad for Downey in this whole movie, because I just feel like he's this like bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, doe-eyed person, and he gets so confused and scared on the stand when Ross starts coming after him, and he's just like looking over to Hal, like, what should I say? And Hal's just like, just answer the question. And so
he didn't want to answer the question because that would implicate Hal, and he didn't want to do that, right? Because he's supposed to be defending, because that was part of his unit. That's his unit now, and he didn't want to break the code because he felt like he would be breaking the code if it basically narked on Hal. But and then Hal basically gave him permission to tell the truth, right? So he said, just answer the captain's question, Corporal, and that's when he answered the question, or Private. I can't remember his rank. Anyways, that was a cool scene.
And then that leads into Kaffee having his like tremendous meltdown back at the apartment, which I felt like Tom Cruise was so good in this scene. I was really mad. I mean, I understood why Daniel was upset, but he handled it so terribly. I think he went very like, it was just a complete like tantrum and outburst that he had. It was super unprofessional, but his like dialogue and the way that he delivered his lines in that scene, I have to admit, were so good and humorous too. Like, I got Jim Carrey vibes at one point when he was like, he did like a buzzer sound. He was like, time's out. And it's a court martial. And I was like, that seemed like he pulled from Jim Carrey in that moment. But
and that part, that was after he lost his star witness. So he had to start witness in Masterson, and Masterson was going to testify to everything. He's like, he had it, does it right. He went and he told Captain Jack, he said, I got him. I got this witness right here. He was there. He was second in command. Well, maybe not the second in command, but I can't remember his exact position. Yeah. But he was right there in the room where it happened, like on Hamilton. He was in the room where it happened. So he's going to testify that the code red was given, and that and it's an open and shut case, because it's a danger to accuse a high-ranking officer of malpractice. But now they had a guy that was in the room when it happened. He was also an officer. He's also an honorable person. So they got him, right? But then the dude goes and offs himself.
Oh, God.
And that was such an impactful moment for me when I watched that. The dude brought his full blue military dress Marine uniform along with his, pristinely polished sidearm and his sword. He had everything. He had all the regalia. And he put it all on and put the 45 in his mouth, and he blew his brains out. Oh, sorry about that, folks. Sorry, I didn't even mean to throw that out there without any warnings. Maybe I'll put something in the front of the episode.
Trigger warning, yeah.
Trigger warning. There is a suicide in this movie. And that was, and they don't show it, but the implication is there, and then they confirmed it later on. And that's when he came home drunk, and he realized, and as far as he was concerned, that they lost the case. It was gone because the star witness is gone. It's like they don't have any evidence now. The plain logs have been doctored, that all they have is the facts of the case, which points to, like, they couldn't, one of the things that kind of angered Zachary and myself, actually, was that the doctor had testified that even though that the soldier that was murdered, Santiago, had all of these medical conditions that would indicate that he would have a medical problem prior to his death, that like having a cloth shoved in his mouth could cause his muscles to produce lactic acid and then cause him to die. The doctor knew this, but then still testified that there was no other way that Santiago could have died. It's like, isn't it possible that having a cloth shoved in his mouth could have caused his death and not poison? Because the doctor was insisting that it had to be poison, that it was poison, and that it was undetectable after the poison was administered. It was like, there's no other way that this could have happened. Like, isn't it possible with Santiago's? Because that's when Kaffee brought out this medical report and all of the symptoms that the doctor said on the stand that could cause somebody to have a condition that would cause them to die and not be murdered was written in the medical report. And the doctor still refused to admit that any other way besides poison. So that was, and Zachary was like, they should have brought their own expert. Their own expert should have testified. And I said, well, Zachary wouldn't matter because the expert wasn't there. Like, they're talking to the guy that actually examined the body and the guy that was basically the personal doctor for that unit. So a doctor that had actually seen Santiago. So any outside expert probably wouldn't be able to refute the doctor that was actually there. So that's probably why Kaffee didn't bother to do that. He was hoping to trap the doctor and get the doctor to admit, but he was unable to get the doctor to admit. The doctor was like, man, my career's on the line. I'm not doing this. he's like, no, it's impossible. Right?
I know. I was so mad. I was so frustrated at that moment because he was like, he denies the disorder. He's like, no, I gave him a clean bill of health, because I think that if he did admit that it's possible that Santiago had this disorder, then he'd have a lot to answer for, because, he gave him a clean bill of health. And then, Ross comes in Kaffee had all these questions for the doctor. I think it's so funny and a little bit annoying that Ross comes in afterward and his only counter argument is, you've had a licensed practice medicine for 17 years, haven't you? That's all I'm going to ask. Like, just because you've had 17 years doesn't mean you can't make mistakes.
Right. Absolutely. But at the very least, he brought that into question. But so you had the doctor that basically lied on the stand. You had the witness that killed himself, and then and so now he has these airplane logs where he can't prove that there was like an earlier flight, which is somehow important to the case, but I don't know how. And so all of these other things. So they was like, well, you should put, and that's when it leads up to where Kaffee had this breakdown where you're talking about, where he's like doing the game show thing. It's like, wrong answer. You get court-martialed for life, right?
Right. I know.
He's like, you're gonna get dishonorably discharged. You're gonna be washing dishes or whatever. Because they were like, well, we should put Jessup on the stand. It's like, no, we said that's the end of our careers. We are done. It was like, we put Jessup on the stand and we can't get him, then we are done, right? So
exactly. But he says like, I'm gonna teach typewriting for women or something like at the end of this. And then I wrote this down because like this is what it was like what he says right before he has like his like violent outburst where he like pushes all the papers off the table and knocks the chairs over. But he goes, thank you for playing the should we or should we not follow the advice of the galactically stupid. Right. And then Jo is so rattled in that moment. She is just like, she can't even have any words. She's just like, wow, I'm appalled and taken aback. And she goes, but she does have a really great line. She says, I'm sorry I lost your set of steak knives. Because he had said like before then in the beginning that like every case that he wins, it like gets him a set of steak knives.
Right. He said he won 9 cases and he wins one more, he'll get a set of steak knives. So he was going to lose this case and he was going to lose the steak knives, right? Which was somehow a very popular prize in minor game shows. So that was an incredible moment. And then he realized that he has an epiphany that he could get Jessup to admit in a way that he couldn't get the doctor to admit that he ordered the code red. That was the thing. If he could get Jessup to admit that he ordered the code red, then that would exonerate, for the most part, his clients. And it's like,
Yes.
you think that you can get him? He's like, I think he wants to tell her. I think nobody's going to tell him how to run his spaces, especially some girly man in white uniform. I say girly man. He says a bad word.
And then he does that. He does a really great Jack Nicholson impression, I must say. It's so spot on. I think that might have been improvised when I was reading, but okay,
yeah, that was improvised. So
so good.
Yeah, and then they go in, and then they go in, they start questioning Jessup, and they get to everybody's favorite part, the thing that is the meme that has been shot around the world, where they question him, and he's like, "Did you order the code red?" I think he said, "You don't deserve the answer. You don't want to know the answer." Or something like that. He
says, "I think I'm entitled." Yeah.
Yeah. Do you really want to know the answer? I think I'm entitled to. And then he says something else like, "I want the truth." Yeah. You can't handle the truth.
Such an amazing line and an even more amazing delivery from Jack Nicholson. I mean, if you know nothing else about this movie, you know of that line.
Right. As a matter of fact, the thing about that is even when he walks in the room, it's like the gravity shifts towards him, right? He's such a commanding presence, right? He's so effective. Like everything he says is like you're paying careful attention to. And it's something that everybody loves from this movie. They love that part of this movie. And it makes this movie live on like forever. So, and then, but the other part that was really great is like before he answers the questions, like, cause his supervisor, Joanne says that if you think you can't get him, don't do it. Like, if you think you can't get him, and it's like, when he's about to ask a question, like, actually, even before, like, Jessup gets up on the stand, he goes to take a drink of water, and he's shaking.
Yes,
right?
That's one of my favorurt parts, where his hand is shaking. I love that part.
Oh, he was like, I think I only noticed that in my second watch. He was like, oh, I'm about to kill all of us, right? And so when his counsel senses that he's about to ask a question, it's his the guy that says, Kevin Pollak says he's the guy that has no useful purpose in the beginning of it.
Oh,
so
I know.
Lieutenant Weinberg,
but he does,
right?
He has a very important purpose at the very end,
right? So Lieutenant Weinberg, he kind of shakes his head. It's like, don't do it. You're not going to get him. But and then Joanne is stone faced, like she's not revealing anything. Like she's not giving up nothing. And so he decides he's just gonna go for it. He's like, "Did you order the code red?"
Yep.
Did you order the code red? You goddamn right I did.
and they're shocked, like they're like, "Oh my god, we got him!" But and Joe is like trying to be so stone faced, but you can see like her eyes like get widened,
right?
And it's so hard to like not break character, and it's like they're all just like, "Oh my god, he actually said it!" And it's so silly because the judge he says you don't have to answer that to
right.
Jessup.
He did say that. He did say that
like,
because that's totally inappropriate because it would incriminate himself. That's one of those things where you plead the fifth because you have a right not to incriminate yourself because that would be a crime. But it turned out Kaffee was right. He does not like being put through this, or not Kaffee, but I mean,
Jessup doesn't like,
right. Jessup doesn't like to be questioned. Jessup doesn't like to be pushed, questioned about how he runs his base. This is his command.
Yes.
This is his base. He doesn't like to be questioned. And he likes to tell people, this is the way I do things and I do things my way. And that's the way it goes, right? He is that type of person. So Kaffee read him right? So
yeah, he did.
So yeah, the judge told him you don't have to answer it, and then when he admits it, and then he was like, "You people have no idea what I have to do for your freedom," and he goes on that speech, and that was an excellent speech. And then everybody is in shock. Like Sam is in shock. What's his name? Kaffee is in shock. The prosecutors are in shock. Like he didn't even know what to say. He's like, "Oh God!" Then he realized, like, I guess we got to do these proceedings and put this dude under arrest. And then there was a whole scuffle. And then when he tried to attack when Jessup tried to attack Kaffee, he's like, "I'm going to rip off your head and piss down your skull!" Right?
I I like totally forgot he even said that too. There was like a review I was reading. They're like, everybody says the line, "You can't handle the truth," but nobody reads this line of like,
Right,
"I'm gonna your
right.
eyes and kissing your dead skull," and it's just as like great delivery. And it's like, dude, you're incriminating yourself even more. First of all, you think you can leave after you have admitted that you gave the code
Right.
red.
He
Like,
thought he was just going to go back to his base.
I'm being charged for a crime. Is that what's happening?
Right.
And then Daniel has like a great line, a great reply to Jack Nicholson's character. He's like, "I'm a lawyer and an officer of the Navy, and you're under arrest, you son of a bitch." And then they walk away.
Right.
It's so good. I did want to like backtrack just a little bit because I really like how they like lead up to the code, you can't handle the truth, and like the admission to the code red, because I think that's one of the things I really love about this movie is that like Daniel specifically will ask a question in the very beginning and you're like, where are you going with this? Like, why is this an important question? And then you realize like at the end, he gets him to basically admit a lot of things through the argumentation. So he first is talking to Jessup about like, in your plans to like come to court today, what did you pack? How many phone calls did you make? And yada yada yada. And so Jessup explains what he did, and then Daniel goes back and says, well, okay, so Santiago thought he was going to leave. He thought he was going to be transferred off the base. He hadn't packed a thing, and he hadn't called anybody. And also, if your orders are always followed, and you ordered your base not to touch Santiago, then why was it so necessary to transfer him so quickly? And he just like gets him in that moment.
Right.
And I thought that was really good.
And he tried to lie. Jessup tried to say, well, it's because he wanted to leave. It was like, no, that's not what you said. You said it was for his safety. You wanted to transfer for his safety.
He was in grave danger. Is there any other kind of danger? It's grave danger.
Right. It's like, so there, you would think that he could have got him with just that, but he knew he needed more than that. He needed an actual admission, right? So it's like, he said that he was in grave danger, so he wanted to get him off the base. But if his orders are always followed, then why would he be in grave danger? It's a paradox. It is a paradox that you can't solve, right? But he found, but he got him to admit it, and that worked marvelously.
And that was when he goes, "You snotty little bastard."
Right.
He knew he got him.
It was his way of saying, like in Jurassic Park, "Clever girl."
Right. Yes, it was.
So there was another part that's kind of leads up to it. It was further back when like so Sam and Joanne, they're kind of talking. It's like they're the only ones in the courtroom. This is after the case is missed. And Joanne says like, "So why do you hate them so much?" And Sam says, "Because they picked on a bully. They picked on somebody, a weakling." And it's like, I just hate bullies and I hate weaklings. And I really enjoyed that. And then the other one was like, and he asked her, "Why do you like them so much?" And she says, "Because they stand in the wall. You're not going to get through here. Not on my watch." Not that way. No, man, that was so powerful.
It was. And then I think that also makes him realize like, all right, let's like continue this and let's like try to seek justice for them. So
right. Yeah. You kind of see the everybody's perspective on the case. And another one, like at the very end of the movie, when the PFC Downey, he was confused, like, because they got acquitted on murder and conspiracy to commit murder, but they were convicted on conduct unbecoming a Marine, and they were going to be dishonorably discharged, which is something that they desperately wanted to avoid because they did not want to be discharged, right? They wanted to, because the PFC, he thought he was going to go back to his base and everything was just going to continue as usual. Everything was going to be hunky-dory. Like, but even if he was acquitted of all 3 charges, there was no way he was going back to that base. They was going to have to transfer him somewhere else so he could be safe, because then he would be in danger. He would be bullied and whatnot.
Yeah.
So he was like, so he was questioned, like, I don't understand. It's like, well, we did nothing wrong, and he's correct. He basically did nothing wrong because he followed orders, and he thought that that's what he was supposed to do. But then Lance Corporal Dawson was like, it's because we were supposed to look after people like Santiago. And wow, that was powerful. That was I'm getting emotional just talking.
I know. I got goosebumps at that moment. I mean, yeah. he understands. And I think there had been at some point too where we realized like Dawson had a history of sticking up for his other, military members. Like there was someone named Curtis Bell, or there was someone named Bell, and Bell had been essentially like on barracks restriction, and he could only there was no food, and he could only drink water. And so like Dawson had snuck him food, and that's like why he got low marks and he didn't get promoted. So Dawson had a history of wanting to stick up for, his fellow Marines, thank you. And because he was punished for it, that's why he didn't stick up for Santiago in the end. And he realizes that. So yeah, it was disappointing because they really wanted to stay within the Marines, and that was the one thing that they did get charged with is dishonorable discharge. But yeah, I mean, I think it was a nice moment to see.
Right. So yeah, very powerful movie. I truly enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Oh wow. It's hard to walk away from that.
Right.
And not
I do want to say my
impactful.
my one favorite part at the end is when you realize, because they brought their flight crew in to testify and they just kind of did it for show. And Kaffee admits like they were just going to testify. They don't recall anything, but it was the fact that they brought them in and Jessup saw them and he was probably like, oh shit, like they're gonna rat me out. So I really liked that part too.
It was a show for Jessup to get him rattled because they needed to pull out all the tools in the toolkit.
Yes, absolutely. They got him.
Yeah, so yeah, that was absolutely fabulous. So it's hard to transition. I don't know how to do transitions or segues or anything like that. So hold on, we'll be right back after this musical cue. I'm looking for my cue board right now. Let's see. Am I supposed to play this one? Am I supposed to play this one? Yeah, I will play this one. Okay, I think I played the wrong one, but it doesn't matter. I'll fix it in post. So now we got trivia from IMDb, and we're going to look at some of the behind the scenes shenanigans that went on in this movie. So the original play was inspired by an actual code red at Guantanamo Bay. Lance Corporal David Cox and 9 other enlisted men tied up a fellow Marine and severely beat him for snitching on the Naval Criminal Investigation Service, NCIS, for those of you who like the TV show. Cox was acquitted and later honorably discharged. In 1994, David Cox mysteriously vanished, and his bullet-riddled body was found 3 months after. His murder remains unsolved.
Jeez.
Yeah, that's shocking.
Wow. Yeah, definitely. So this next one is writer Aaron Sorkin got the story idea from his sister, who in real life experienced a very similar incident at Guantanamo from the Lieutenant Commander Galloway perspective as a female. JAG attorney. Sorry, I really fumbled that.
That's okay.
In that incident, the victim was similarly assaulted by 9 Marines and was badly injured, but did not die. Sorkin initially turned the idea into a play and then his screenplay, which was his first.
Yeah. So, like I said, I pulled these off of IMDb. I'm pretty sure this is the first and second things we read were the same incident.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess his sister was actually involved in this case that talks about David Cox. But wow, crazy, right?
Yeah, I can't believe. I mean, I was wondering like how common code reds were in actuality in the military. So it was interesting to read like this was inspired by something that did happen.
Right. When I was in basic training, they referred to it as a blanket party, but not necessarily a code red. And it didn't happen when I was in basic training, but people used to talk about it. So a blanket party, because what happens is that, especially in basic training, you're usually like you're part of a platoon, which is about 40 people. And if one person in your platoon is falling behind or makes a mistake, then usually the entire platoon is punished for it, because it's up to the platoon to make sure all the individuals in the platoon are up to standard. So, you basically, so if somebody is failing on their physical fitness, then the platoon gets together and basically tries to help that person get better at physical fitness or something like that.
Gotcha.
But there are some mistakes that people make. Like Zachary had reminded me earlier of I guess it was because it was a meme on a TV show or whatever. So there was another movie called Full Metal Jacket. And so in Full Metal Jacket, there's a famous scene where one of the privates in basic training had snuck and got himself a jelly donut. So when they're in the barracks, while he's eating this jelly donut, like the I think they call him what do you call him? Drill sergeant. So the drill sergeant catches him, and he forces him to eat this jelly donut at night while the rest of his platoon around him are doing push-ups. So that's the type. So there is like punishment push-ups. They're not pleasant push-ups. They're punishment push-ups.
Right. Yeah.
So it's usually way more push-ups than your body can physically do. So this is the type of way to encourage everybody to be up to standard. So a blanket party is when it's not, as far as I know, it's never specifically ordered. It's like when somebody is falling behind standard and they're not pulling their weight, then some of the people in your platoon might decide to just beat you up to punish you because they don't want to be punished themselves. So it typically means that they wrap you up, or like while you're in your bunk, they'll basically trap you in your blankets or whatnot, and then they'll have like pillowcases full of soap or something, and then they'll beat you with that soap, and then they'll go away.
Yeah.
I want to admit that I think it's called a blanket party. It might be something else, but still, that's what they're calling a code red in this movie.
Yeah.
So moving right along. Tom Cruise's Jack Nicholson impersonation, which you talked about earlier, when his character is quoting Colonel Jessup, was not scripted. Demi Moore and Kevin Pollak's reactions were genuine. And the thing about this is Kevin Pollak that's what he does. He does impersonations.
Yeah.
So like, and his most, at least in my mind, his most famous impersonation is that of William Shatner playing Captain Kirk. So, so Kevin Pollak, as a professional impersonator, I think that he's probably thoroughly impressed with. I think that Tom Cruise was probably inspired by Kevin Pollak to do the Jack Nicholson impersonation. That's my theory. Because you got,
I like that,
right? Because you got an impersonator that's like, let me say what an impersonator what I can do.
Yeah, and I feel like if you get Kevin Pollak to like laugh at it, then you did a good job.
Right. And I think Kevin Pollak was probably impressed by that.
So this one is: an unnamed executive gave Aaron Sorkin a note. If Tom Cruise and Demi Moore aren't going to sleep with each other, why is Demi Moore a woman? He responded, I said the obvious answer. Women have purposes other than to sleep with Tom Cruise. He claimed the incident was his worst experience as a screenwriter. Wow. That's really upsetting.
Yeah, that is upsetting. And that's how people think. And it's also impressive and intriguing that, like, even though there was a lot of great chemistry between Tom Cruise and Demi Moore, even though they were adversarial for most of the movie, but even when they're fighting, it still seemed like they had like great chemistry. And then she asked them out on a date, and that's as close as they got to anything that was, considered romantic. But and I'm glad they didn't put it in a movie because
yes,
as I'm about to read it, it just would have been out of place. So to follow that up, in Sorkin's word, nobody at TriStar was talking about a romance, by the way. We were just talking about these two people going to bed. When Rob Reiner came aboard to direct, he used his clout against the studio and told Aaron Sorkin to toss the screenplay and start over. Reiner had seen the play and loved it and felt adding a sexual encounter added nothing to the story and was just a cheap Hollywood thrill tactic. Especially, this is like early 90s. But like in the 80s, like it seemed like every movie had to have like a full-on sexual scene, whether it made sense or not. So it makes sense in The Terminator, does not make sense in Commando. In Commando, they actually filmed the sex scene, but it looked horrible, and so they decided not to use it.
Gotcha. Yeah, I don't think it would have added anything to this story. I'm glad that it they did not put that in there.
Right.
And also, like, women do have other purposes other
Right,
than to
right.
sleep with Tom Cruise.
Right.
Yeah, I think I liked the way they played it, where they just like go to a date and it's this like really dive like seafood place that's like not fancy at all, but like really fun atmosphere.
Right.
And that was all they did. They didn't really focus much more on like where their relationship's gonna go, because that's not the story. The story is about these two Marines who they're trying to find justice for.
Right. And it was just that scene just served to build their characters. And it did, and that's that's what it was for, and that's what you want to do in a movie. You want to build the characters, you want to strengthen the story arc, you want to do those things. You don't want to add stuff to the movie that don't make sense, and there are a lot of love scenes or sex scenes that don't make sense, or even character connections that don't make sense. But in this movie, they just kept it simple. This is about a courtroom drama, and that's what we should stick to. Actually, as I'm talking about this, it kind of reminds me of what happened at the finale of She-Hulk, when She-Hulk is like, "This is not where the story is supposed to be going."
Yes, exactly. And then she flips the script. Oh yeah, that's a whole other like conversation we could have about like the finale of the She-Hulk. But yeah,
right.
Yeah, I feel like it is very a Hollywood thing where it's like, well, if we have a male lead and a female lead, then they have to be together and they have to have a romantic connection. It's like, no, they really don't. They didn't even really have Tom Cruise and Demi Moore didn't even really have to have a romantic connection. They could just be two colleagues who respect each other as professionals. But
right.
Hollywood seems to always want to have the romance.
Right. I mean, and imagine that. Imagine a woman professional. Imagine just her just doing her job and going home and going to sleep at night with her cat or with Chips or something. It's like, imagine that, right? Like if a guy can do it, imagine a woman doing it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's crazy. All right.
Yeah, so moving on, Jack Nicholson was paid $5 million for 10 days work. Technically, he worked an extra morning for free when Rob Reiner and crew didn't get all of his footage shot in time. Nicholas later admitted that it was one of the few times the money was well spent. And I wish I got paid $5 million for 10 days work. Dang.
Right. Similarly, it was, what's his name? Marlon Brando, when he did Superman, he got paid an obscene amount of money for just a few minutes. And even, I don't know if Jack Nicholson was paid, I think he got a fair amount of screen time in Batman when he was in the Batman. He was in there for most of that movie. He was the most memorable character, but also he got top billing, even though he wasn't the hero, and got paid an obscene amount of money for being in that movie. But I guess like when you if you got that kind of clout, you got to use it.
and I mean, I think it's fair too, because damn, he was so good in this movie.
Yeah,
I don't think it could have been anybody else.
Right. It would have been hard for it to be anybody else. If anybody else could have pulled it off, and say it was an unknown actor, then it would have made their career, right?
Oh, yeah.
If they could have pulled off that, those acting chops the same way Jack Nicholson did. So the Defense Department refused to endorse the film. This meant that the filmmakers couldn't utilize any military installation during filming. Most of it was shot on a Culver City soundstage. So, yeah, like I mentioned earlier.
Yeah. So while filming the scene in which Kendrick is driving Kaffee's group around the base in a Humvee through 2 rows of marching Marines, Kiefer Sutherland had trouble driving the extra wide vehicle and actually hit Marines on multiple takes. Dang.
That is funny. Yeah. So the Humvee is in fact extra wide, and you gotta be careful how you drive it. You can't drive it like a regular car. Like when most people drive, I don't know how most people are taught how to drive. But when I was taught, it's like you just put yourself in the middle of the road, and then your car would be in the middle of the road. You just imagine yourself walking in the middle, and your car would be in the middle. So, but with a Humvee, you can't do that. With the Humvee, it's like you gotta actually walk on the left line, or the left dotted line. That's where you walk. And that'll put the Humvee in the middle because it is so wide. It's ridiculous.
Man, I hope those Marines were okay.
I do too. I don't know. It's like, how are you hitting Marines? That's not. Maybe those were extras, and they were like, "Yeah, that's all right." Maybe. Or somebody's going home. I got hit by Kiefer Sutherland, y'all.
Yeah, their claim to fame.
I'm surprised that it's not like you can see that shot very well. So why didn't it just get...
It's very brief, yeah.
Right, yeah, they couldn't have got a stunt driver to do that.
Right. Or just like not had the Marines on the sides.
Or not
walking so close.
Not necessarily even doing that scene. Oh,
yeah.
Funny thing about that is that when they were talking about driving around on Guantanamo, and Sam had encouraged them to wear their dress whites, and they didn't. It's like, no, you want to put this camouflage on.
And he's like, thanks, Sam.
The enemy might decide to take pot shots.
Yeah, that was funny.
So moving right along, Jack Nicholson told Rob Reiner he noticed that when he walked into the first rehearsal, the rest of the cast rushed to their seats. Afterwards, I told him, Rob, it was so strange. I felt like the fucking Lincoln Memorial. Nicholson told the Los Angeles Times, I blushed actually. So,
aww,
yeah, that's cute. So he's aware of his gravity, and
yes,
but at the same time, it shocks him when he affects people, I guess, the way it does. But that was that's a cute little thing that happened.
I feel like that humbles him a little bit. Like he's not just like, yeah, I know I'm the shit, which he is, but he at least like, is very humble.
At least I hope so.
With how. Yeah, I mean, I talk about like I know who Jack Nicholson and I hang out, and I know, I have no idea for sure. Would love to hang out with Jack Nicholson, but maybe another time.
Right.
Kevin Bacon praised Kiefer Sutherland for embracing the darkness of his character. Sutherland praised Tom Cruise for inspiring him with his acting. And I have to say, like, Sutherland does play a very dark character, as we mentioned.
Yeah, they all great. I put the sentence in here because it's a very bromance moment. It's a huge bromance.
They're like, no,
moment.
You're good. No, you're good. You're good.
Finally, the title for the play and film came from a long-running recruiting campaign for the U.S. Marine Corps. We're looking for a few good men. The campaign was slowly phased out through the 1980s with the well-known, the few, the proud, the Marines. So, what's funny about Marine commercials compared to any other commercials is most other recruiting commercials, it's more of a realistic depiction of life in the military. I mean, it's glorified but realistic. Like in the Army commercials, it's Army people doing the Army stuff, and Air Force commercials the same thing. But in the Marine commercials, they're fighting dragons, crossing bridges. Their sword, they have a magic wand that turns into a sword, and then their regular clothes transforms to a Marine uniform. It's crazy. At least that's what they used to look like. I don't know what they look like now.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I was really interested to hear like where they came up with the title "A Few Good Men," because I was under the impression that it's like there are a few good men out there.
Right. Yeah, that was a campaign for it. I remember those campaigns. And the Army was be all you can be, and the Air Force, nothing can stop the U.S. Air Force, and I don't remember what the Navy was, but yeah, they were all catchy. Like we are, the military has very good advertisement. It's all volunteer military. So how do you get these young people to join a service where they might get killed? And it's very good marketing.
Yeah, very good marketing. Yeah.
You don't remember anything else. And then it's at a time when you're forced to watch commercials. Like I don't know what the Marine commercials looks like now because I'm streaming almost everything. So I'm watching almost everything commercial free. And so, but back in those days, it's like commercials were basically inescapable. And,
True.
And so everybody was familiar with all the slogans and whatnot. So yeah, and that's how it seeped into the title of the film.
Yeah. Very cool.
Right. All right. So, that's it for the, what do you call these things? The trivia. It's funny when I get to a segment, I can't remember the name of the segment.
I mean, I know how you feel. It happens.
Well,
we've been going on for a while now, so it's natural, I think. It's
funny, right? Because like, oh, I've only been doing this for 2 years, but hey, whatever's right.
Yeah. We're all just like flying by the seat of our pants,
Right, absolutely. And so I'm gonna play this last musical cue, and then afterwards we will talk about what the critics thought. Now we're at the segments where we talk about what the critics thought. The critics gave it an 86%. I'm sorry, Rotten Tomatoes, the audience gave it 84%. On IMDb reviews, it's got a 7.6 out of 10, which for IMDb is very high. My theory is that people are afraid to give a 10 because they want to reserve that for the best of the best of the best. But there's no such thing. I mean, did you find it entertaining? It's probably a 10 for you. If you watched it multiple times, it's probably a 10. But people feel like they should reserve that for, I don't know, God. So
I know. I'm like, I give a lot of 5 out of 5 sometimes where I'm like, if I just like no movie is like exactly perfect to me, I feel like, but if it makes me feel good and I want to watch it multiple times and I've thoroughly enjoyed it, then yeah, it gets a like the highest score it can get for me.
Absolutely. And I think this is one of those films. So if you can let us know what the critics think on this movie.
Yeah. So David Anson from Newsweek wrote, designed to get the audience rooting for this upper class underdog, the movie accomplishes its task with military efficiency. But since the deck is stacked and the cards well worn, it hardly seems a victory to cherish.
Yeah. This is actually what do you call that? A fresh tomato review, but he's like giving it. He has reservations about it. Like he likes it, but it seems like he has reservations. So I don't know how I feel about his review, but
yeah, I did like. I mean, I feel like he worded it well with accomplishes its task with military efficiency. But I kind of lost him a little bit once he got into the deck is stacked and cards well worn.
Right. I think he's trying to say it's kind of ridiculous. Like I've seen this before, and it's. I mean,
makes sense.
That's whatever. For me, I hadn't seen anything like this before, except for maybe 12 Angry Men, which kind of a similar premise. Or if you watched a lot of Perry Mason or stuff like that. But and this, I guess it's because this movie kind of has a Perry Mason moment. Like very rarely in real life do movies have like a Perry Mason moment where somebody admits to committing the crime or something like that. Like in Perry Mason is, of course I did it. Don't you see? Don't you see? Or you kind of get that in Murder, She Wrote. So maybe that's what he's referring to.
Gotcha. And then we also have Michael Srago from The New Yorker, who wrote the whole film with its steady, important picture pacing, its foursquare visual style, and its pseudo profundity for blah. That word's just like tripping me up. Profundity is a piece of glorified banality.
Yeah, I'm not going to agree with this one.
I don't either.
It's like he was saying,
Go ahead.
I know words and I'm going to use all of them.
I was like, did you do the right click thesaurus and just like, this word looks nice. Let me add that one. I thought it was going somewhere really nice. And then I read banality and I was like, what? I do not agree.
No, I do not. I don't know where he was going with that. How is it? I should have looked up banality to get the full definition, but I kind of get the context of what you're talking about. And it's like, but and my gut wrenching reaction is no, it's nothing like that. What are you talking about? What movie did you watch?
Right. It basically means boring and unoriginal. And I was like, well, we watched different movies because that last scene with Jack Nicholson was anything but boring.
Right. He doesn't. I guess he would prefer something where people just shoot each other all the time. I guess maybe he's a video game player and he prefers to play video games. That's
maybe.
What it is. So Mike Massey from Gone with the Twins wrote, suspenseful, powerful, poignant, unforgettable, and sharply directed. All of these things are true. I felt exactly the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, Jeff Andrew from Time Out wrote, the endlessly tasteless juvenile should make you ashamed of laughing yourself into a stupor. You know what? That's from a different movie.
I was like trying to follow it and I was like, what does he mean?
Yeah, that's actually from a different movie. I
Gotcha.
I told you that there would be errors and that's one of them. So so we're done with the critics. So basically because I forgot to put in what somebody else is supposed to say, but that's all right. Well, anyways, you get the idea how critics thought, but like more people liked it than they didn't like it. And then what I find is that when people write like negative reviews, it's like they're trying to write something negative sometimes. Not that they genuinely just, especially when it's something like 86 to 90%, the 10% of the people didn't like it, or like they'll write some really weird things about why they didn't like a particular movie. But because I guess they have to say they're like the type of people who's like, well, everybody's saying this movie is good, so I have to write something negative.
I know. Like, yeah, that's annoying.
Right. So that's it for what the critics thought. So finally, A Few Good Men is, as of this recording, available on wherever you can buy videos. That's it for today. Thank you for joining us. Please join us next week for another special guest, TikTok sensation and influencer Sequoia Holmes from the Black People Love Paramore podcast for an iconic film in the Black culture, Waiting to Exhale. You can follow us on Twitter or TikTok at Backlick Cinema, or on Facebook or Instagram at Backlick Cinema Podcast for updates. Don't forget that you can contact us with any questions, comments, or suggestions at fanmail@backlickcinema.com. Do you have any plugs that you want to put out to the audience? Let them know where they can find you, hear you, see you.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, we are Why the Flick movie podcast, and we are on a mid-season break right now, but you can catch up on all of our other episodes basically wherever you listen to podcasts. We're on Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, a whole bunch of others. We're on Anchor as well. And then on social media, you can follow us at Why the Flick on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And then we also have a letterbox at Why the Flick, so you can check out, we post our movie reviews there too, so you can check us out on all those places.
Awesome. That's great. I think I should check out your letterbox.
Oh yeah. Thank you.
So one last time, if you like the show, then please help us grow. To do this, you can subscribe to the show, rate us, write a review on Spotify, Spotchaser.com, Apple Podcasts, or your favorite podcast app. And I know you've enjoyed our guest, Claire, from Why the Flick, so please go check out her show with her co-host, Elizabeth. Believe me, it matters. Be safe, share a movie from yesteryear with your family, hug your loved ones, and if you're going to be anything, be outstanding.